Alright class, well welcome back. So let's pick back up and finish the IBM expenses worksheet that was initially ChangeMe, and let's let's complete steps 3 through 12. So on this next step, what we want to do is we want to get the percent expenses. So this is going to be the expense divided by the sum, and you'll notice here I wrote absolute cell reference. So let's talk about absolute cell reference. So in E2, what we want to do, and essentially when we start getting the percent of something, what we're essentially doing is doing a pie shape of it. So if you think about, this is how big the 20,952 is going to be in the overall 28,702. So if we just think about that, that's going to be roughly about 75% if we think about that. So what we can do is we could say equals, in a cell, B2 divided by B7. So what that's going to do is it's going to take this piece of the pie, B2, over the total part of the pie. And now if we click this, we get 0.73. But let's change this into a percent. So in the Home tab still, if you click on number, you could see this percent, and if you click on that, that'll change that into 73%. So this is probably right because we said this is roughly 21 and that's a little bit more than 28. So it's roughly 75%. So let's try autofill here and see what happens. It's probably not going to turn out too well, but let's do it anyways just to show you. If we drag down now, we're going to see we have all these divide by zeros. Surely this isn't good. So if you remember what I said in the last video, if we have this cell B2 divided by B7, and if we drag it down, this next cell is going to be B3 divided by B8. While we did want B3, we still wanted to keep B7 the same. So what we can do in this particular case is going back into cell E2, instead of saying this is B2 divided by B7, we'll do B7, and if you put dollar signs in front of the B and dollar signs in front of the 7, that creates an absolute value that if we drag it down on autofill, the B2 will change, but the B7 won't. In Windows, you can do a shortcut and hit F4 on your keyboard, and then that will add the dollar signs in front of the B and in front of the 7 for this particular case. If we click on enter, the 73% didn't change, but now if we do autofill, again we get that lower right hand corner and get the X, and if we take it down now, I'm going to actually erase this one here, then you'll see that we have 20%, 4%, 1%. Also, we said that we can highlight these cells, and then if we do go E2 to E6, down here we can see we have a sum of 100%. And that's what we would expect because we essentially have a whole pie and we're seeing how big each piece is. So selling, general, and administrative is 73%. Research, development, and engineering is 20%. Just as a note, that's pretty amazing that IBM invests close to $6 billion a year in research and development. A pretty hefty number. Alright, so that completes step 3. Now we want to complete step 4. So what we want to do is we want to add columns for the percent expense for 2013 and 2014. To do that, we can click on the column F, and notice that I'm clicking on the whole column here and not F2. So if you click on F, and you'll see the whole column will light up. If you right click, now we can do insert, and then we're going to right click and insert again. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to autofill this over as well, just because I'm lazy and I hate typing. So now in cell F2, we can say percent expense for 2013, and you'll notice that I'm up in the formula bar up here. This is called the formula bar. I'm going to tab over, or you could have pressed the arrow over or just click the cell. And again, I'm going to update this 2012 to 2014. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the percent expenses for 2013. So for this one, we'll say equals. You'll notice that every formula will always start off with an equals. And in this case, we're going to do C2 divided by C7. And don't forget that we want to make this absolute. So I'm going to press F4 to create the dollar signs on the C7. And then the great thing about Excel is that it'll typically try to make the cell next to it the same format. So it tries to guess what you need, and it'll do that formula for you. Okay, so now that we have that, we can drag this down. Okay, then let's do the same thing for the 2014 expenses. So we'll say equals D2 divided by D7. We're going to press F4, select that, and then we'll drag this down as well. Okay. And then you'll notice that if I look at G2 to G6, that'll be 100%. And I just always like to check as I go along to make sure things are going well. Alright, so that completes step 4. Let's move on to step 5. In this formula, what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the percent change from year to year. We can calculate the percent change with the formula of new minus old in parentheses divided by old. For any math people out there, you'll probably, if we just did new minus old divided by old without the parentheses, what that would do is the division is going to happen first, because if you remember in math class, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, it would essentially be new minus old divided by old. Since this is a higher operation, old divided by old, that will be 1, and we just result in new minus 1. So let's take a look at this one and see how this works. So we're going to go into H2 this time. We said we're going to do equals new minus old divided by old. Here's our formula right here. Okay. And in this particular case, new is going to be the year 2014. So we'll look at the 2014, and that's going to be cell D2 minus old. That's going to be cell C2. We'll finish our parentheses, and then we're going to divide that by old. Again, that's going to be C2. And now if we hit enter here, so that made it a number. So let's change that into a percent. Okay, and now we have 8%. In this particular case, we actually want in cell H3 this to be the D3 minus D2 divided, or D3 minus C3 divided by C3. So in this particular case, now we can just autofill down. We do not have to use absolute reference in this case. And now if we pull this down, we'll see that these numbers are a bit funky, only because we have other expenses, and year to year these aren't very consistent. That's why you have those negative ones in there, and that's fine. So let's do the percent change for 2013 to 2012. So now 2013 becomes new. So in this particular case, we'll say equals, put our parentheses in, C2 minus B2, and then in this case, B2 is going to be old. And then let's change this back into a percent. And now we can drag this down. Okay, so now we have our percents. And for this particular one, the two major headers here will be selling in general and research and development. All these other ones kind of fluctuate year to year. That's why we're getting some of these negative numbers, but don't worry about it too much. I'm more just concerned that you're able to understand the formula of new minus old in parentheses divided by old. Alright, so that completes this step. Now one of the things you'll see in columns H and I now is that it's overflowing on a columns and it looks like it's being chopped off. So one way to do this is we can double click in between H and J, but another way to fix this is we could potentially use wrap text. So if you go into cell H2, and now you can see in the alignment group, you'll see wrap text, and then now we have 2013, and I'm going to scooch this up a little bit just to make it say percent change 2014 to 2013, but you can leave it there. And typically on this one, we might want to have this one centered. It'll probably look a lot nicer. Okay, so now if we want, we can do the same thing for I2. We can do the wrap text. And right now I'd like to show you an alternate shortcut. So if you like, you can hit H2, and then this up in the upper left hand corner is this thing called Format Painter. And what this will do is it will take the format of one cell and transfer it to another cell. So in this particular case, if we hit Format Painter, and now if we go into I2, it will copy what we did in H2, or I'm sorry, in H1 over to I1. So that's pretty nifty, and if we want, we can move this in a little bit. And then now they look consistent. Alright, so that's another step. Okay. Let's see how we're doing on time. I don't like to have these more than... So this is another 12 minutes. So let's stop here, and then maybe we'll have one or two more videos to complete this exercise before we're done. So let me pause here, and then we'll pick back up on another video.